Starsteel, the last shard. Starsteel. Chapter 1. The impact site. The sky tore open without warning. Above the arid plateau of New Mexico, a brilliant streak of white-gold fire split the dusk horizon. It blazed silently at first, too low, too fast for a plane, too erratic for any satellite. Then came the roar. A thunderclap rolled across the desert, followed by a shockwave that rattled every pane of glass within 100 miles. Dr. Lena Reyes stood in the doorway of her mobile geology lab, eyes wide behind sun-tinted lenses. She watched as the object spiraled, trailing bursts of iridescent sparks like dying stars. It vanished behind a jagged ridge of sandstone mesas, and seconds later, the earth rumbled beneath her feet. She didn't hesitate. Grabbing her field scanner and throwing her dark braid over her shoulder, she jumped into the jeep and raced toward the impact. The crater was still glowing when she arrived. The air shimmered with heat, but not from fire, more like an invisible pulse. Lena stepped cautiously toward the impact zone, boots crunching over glassy black rock that hadn't been there minutes ago. At the center was the meteorite, not burning, not smoking, just resting. It was roughly the size of a small car, but what made her breath catch wasn't its scale. It was its texture. Its surface was smooth, almost liquid-like, with delicate lattice-like ridges that shifted when she moved around it. Lines of faint blue light pulsed through it, as though the rock were breathing. She knelt and held the scanner to it. Error. Element not recognized. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The machine should have returned something, iron, nickel, even trace carbon, but this wasn't registering at all." She backed away slowly, heart pounding. This wasn't just geology anymore. This was something else. Time to call Evan. 3 hours later, Dr. Evan Callan stood over the meteorite, his silver-streaked beard illuminated by the blue glow. His coat flapped in the hot desert wind, and the gleam in his eyes reminded Lena why she'd called him. "You were right," he muttered, running a magnetic probe over the surface. "It's not just a metal. It's not even a metal we understand. The atomic structure, it's layered, recursive. It shouldn't be able to exist in this state." "What does that mean?" Lena asked. "It means," Evan said, tapping the scanner, "that this stuff isn't just exotic. It's impossible. It's like artificial matter. Something made this." Lena crossed her arms. "You mean aliens?" "I mean someone not from Earth," Evan replied. "And if I'm right, it's not inert either. Look here." He pointed to a pulse in the structure. "The lattice responds to magnetism and electrical pulses. I think it's alive in some way, dormant but aware." The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. They didn't report it. Instead, they brought it to Evan's off-grid lab compound, a facility deep in the desert, built during his tenure in private aerospace. His remaining team, just 3 people he trusted with his life, began analyzing the material with a mix of awe and fear. They couldn't cut it, they couldn't melt it, they couldn't even dent it. But Evan had one last idea, something he'd designed but never dared to try: the quantum crucible. A chamber that used extreme pressure, magnetic resonance, and high-frequency plasma waves to reshape molecular structure. 10 days later, they succeeded. The meteorite wasn't broken. It was transformed. They forged it into armor plates, sleek and seamless, each with faint blue veins that pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat. The exosuit framework was built from Earth tech: carbon fiber, tungsten skeletal structures, synthetic muscle mesh. But the plates were alien, and once attached, the whole suit changed. It became something else, something more. The suit was complete, and waiting. On the 13th night, as Evan stood alone in the forge chamber running final diagnostics, he heard footsteps behind him. "Delivery for Dr. Callan." A voice, relaxed, slightly tired. Evan turned to see a tall man in dusty cargo pants, holding a crate of high-frequency regulators. He wasn't anyone special, a contractor, a warehouse runner. "Just leave it there," Evan said, waving, but the man's eyes had landed on the suit. "Whoa, what the hell is that?" "Prototype," Evan muttered. "Not active. Please don't touch." Too late. The suit moved. Chapter 2. The Chosen. Jace Kade froze as the armor stirred. The room dropped into silence, broken only by the soft hum of generators and the faint, rhythmic thrum pulsing from the alien plates. The air shifted, suddenly charged. Like the moment before a lightning strike, he took one step back. The armor rose from the pedestal. Each plate lifted, hovering in place like an orbiting constellation. The pulsing blue veins glowed brighter now, flaring with every heartbeat, except it wasn't his. It was theirs. Dr. Callan swore under his breath and reached for the emergency cutoff switch, but the screen next to him flashed a message that hadn't existed in any system code. Recognition protocol initiated. Jace's mouth went dry. "What the hell is that thing?" The suit turned toward him. Not just physically, energetically. The plates angled toward him like a sunflower chasing the sun. The air bent around him and his skin prickled as though something ancient had just seen him, chosen him. "Jace, step back," Evan barked. But the moment had already arrived. The plates snapped into motion, faster than thought. They shot toward Jace, not like missiles, but with intention. Graceful, purposeful. His instincts kicked in and he raised his arms, ready to shield himself, but it didn't matter. The armor attached to him in perfect sequence, forearms, chest, legs, spine. The inner lining molded to his muscles, and the blue light surged as the plates sealed around his body like a second skin. Jace screamed, not in pain, at least not physical pain. It was something deeper, something in his mind. He was falling. Inside his own consciousness, flashes of stars, galaxies spinning, voices whispering, not in words, but frequencies, alien thoughts brushing his own like tides crossing through membranes of time. A great war, a dying world, a signal left behind in the last remnant of living steel, waiting, sleeping, and now. Host found. Jace collapsed to his knees as the last piece, an elegant crown-like helmet, locked into place around his head. The world went white-blue, then black. When he opened his eyes, everything had changed. The HUD flickered softly, symbols in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. Heart rate, motion tracking, atmospheric pressure. The room around him was awash in glowing overlays, highlighting movement, temperature, even structural weaknesses in the walls. The armor was weightless, seamless. It responded not to controls, but to thought. "Can you hear me?" Evan's voice broke through a speaker. "Jace, if you can hear this, nod." Jace nodded. The suit responded in kind, adjusting tension, running diagnostics, showing him its systems. And then it spoke, not out loud. Inside. "You are the bearer. We are Starsteel." The lab doors burst open. Lena and the rest of the team rushed in, eyes wide, some holding tools, others sheer disbelief. The armor gleamed under the forge lights, sleek, alien, primal, beautiful. It bonded with him, Lena whispered. Evan nodded slowly. Not just bonded, it chose him. That wasn't random. Jace stood, hands clenched and flexing as the armor adapted. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered. "No one ever does," Evan said, "but something in that metal saw something in you, a signal, a match." The system within the suit pulsed again. Jace felt its awareness settle, like someone powerful standing just behind him, not threatening, just present. "Unit integrity stabilized." Symbiosis confirmed. Purpose, awaiting directive. He looked at Evan. What do we do now? Evan hesitated, then stepped forward. We find out what it really is, what it can do, and what made it. Outside, the desert wind picked up again, swirling dust around the lab. And far above Earth, in the endless black between stars, a faint ripple echoed outward, a signal reborn, ancient, familiar, dangerous, and it had just been heard. Chapter 3. Forging the Unknown. The following days were a blur of tension and wonder. Jace remained at the compound, living in a sterile observation room, fitted with a reinforced testing chamber. The suit wouldn't come off, not entirely. Some parts dematerialized into his skin, vanishing into light. Others clung to him like they were grown from his very bones. Lena monitored his vitals constantly. They never spiked. Not once. "It's like it's regulating you," she said, peering into her tablet. "Your blood pressure, neural patterns, even your sleep cycles. The suit's keeping you at perfect equilibrium." Jace rolled his shoulders. "Feels like being in a low hum, like my whole body's tuned to a different frequency." The real breakthroughs came in the forge room. They ran tests every day. Evan barked commands over comms while the others watched from behind reinforced glass. "Engage movement protocol," Evan said. "Run the obstacle course." Jace moved. Not like a man in armor, like liquid steel in motion. The suit responded to thought, not muscle. He leapt 30 feet without breaking form, climbed walls without handholds, landed from 2 stories with a soft shock absorption pulse that left the floor scorched but intact. Now strength. He lifted a tank engine with one hand. Now speed. Jace sprinted through the chamber. Time seemed to dilate. His awareness expanded. He saw air currents, vibration trails, subtle shifts in friction. "Jesus," Lena whispered from the control room. "He's faster than a sports car." Then came the moment it went off script. They were running diagnostics on energy output when the suit's core flared. Unexpectedly. The lights dimmed. The instruments went haywire. A sphere of soft blue energy formed in Jace's palm, like a plasma orb spun into existence by thought alone. "Stop! That's not in the design!" Evan shouted. Jace stared at the orb. He wasn't summoning it. The suit was. And then it fired. A straight-line beam of blue plasma lanced across the chamber, melting the steel target into slag. It left no residue, just smooth, cauterized metal. The glass in the viewing room cracked from the energy backlash. "What was that?" Lena demanded once Jace returned. He shook his head. "I didn't try to do it. It just did it, like it was responding to a threat." Evan leaned forward. "It's rewriting itself. That wasn't our engineering. That's alien. The suit is evolving." "But how?" Lena asked. Evan turned the display toward them, a visualization of the alien metal's structure under magnification. "Look at this. The lattice is alive. It's shifting, growing more complex. The more Jace uses it, the more the suit learns." That night, Jace sat alone outside, armor folded mostly away into his skin, except for faint glowing lines down his arms and chest. The stars above the desert were brilliant, infinite. He could hear the suit breathing with him. Not like a machine, like a presence. "Why me?" he asked the night. "Because you resist corruption." The voice wasn't loud. It was calm, resonant, like distant thunder through a cave. "You are not perfect, but you chose mercy when others chose violence. You chose honor over command. We saw your pattern. We remembered it." Jace swallowed hard. "We? I am what remains of those who forged me. And you are the last to carry our fire." Inside the lab, Lena stared at her readouts. The core is active even when he sleeps, she said to Evan. The signal's broadcasting. Evan's face paled. Signal? Low frequency, subspace. I don't know how else to describe it, but something out there might hear it. Shut it down. I can't. It's not ours to control. Far beyond Earth, in the cold corridors of forgotten warships, drifting between galaxies, ancient sensors stirred, and on a dying moon cloaked in darkness, something opened its eyes. Chapter 4. The Delivery Man. Before the armor, before the meteor, before the voices in his head, Jace Kade was just a man with a beat-up truck and a bad military record. He kept to himself. No family left, no friends who hadn't faded. He picked up side gigs across New Mexico, warehouse runs, heavy lifting, old-world mechanic work. He never asked questions, and people never asked about the scar across his left eye or the calloused look in his stare. But the truth was always ticking beneath the surface. He used to follow orders, until the day he didn't. Now, as he stood in a dusty salvage yard outside of a forgotten town, the Starsteel suit hidden beneath a flannel shirt and work pants, he felt like he'd stepped into an old life wearing a new skin. The job was supposed to be simple. Drop off a rebuilt thermal compressor, sign for the receipt, leave. But something was off. 3 black SUVs idled by the fence. No logos, tinted windows, no movement. Jace's instincts sparked before the suit even reacted. Then it did. Threat pattern detected. 10 armed hostiles. Predictive aggression imminent. His heartbeat slowed. Guess we're doing this, he muttered. They made their move fast. Men in tactical gear burst from the vehicles. Rifles raised, moving like they'd done this before. Jace raised his hands. Gentlemen, I'm unarmed. Where's the suit? One of them barked. You're coming with us. I don't know what you're talking about. They opened fire. It was reflex. The suit deployed in a blink, plates sliding out from beneath his skin, forming around his body like flowing metal. The bullets didn't bounce. They stopped, hung in the air for a microsecond, then dropped to the ground, crushed flat as if they'd struck a wall of invisible gravity. Jace moved. Not like a soldier, not like a man, like something more. He leapt, twisting midair, landing behind the nearest attacker. A single backhand sent the man flying 10 feet, crashing through a stack of steel barrels. Another raised a grenade launcher. Jace flicked his wrist, and a wave of kinetic force burst from his palm, disarming him and crushing the weapon like tinfoil. No lethal force required, the suit whispered in his mind, unless initiated. Jace nodded. One of the men charged him with a combat knife. Brave, stupid. The blade struck his chest plate and shattered. Jace grabbed him gently by the collar and launched him back toward the SUVs, with just enough force to disable, not kill. In less than 30 seconds, the fight was over. Bodies groaned on the gravel, no fatalities, just a trail of unconscious men and one scorched patch of earth where an EMP device had been fried mid-use. Jace stood in the silence, the last echoes of the battle fading. Then a voice crackled through a still-active comm device dropped by one of the attackers. Asset confirmed. Armor active. Full symbiosis. Proceed to extraction phase. Jace crushed the device in his palm. Back at the compound, Evans slammed his hand on the console. They found him already. How? Lena asked. Evan ran his hand through his hair. They must have been tracking the energy spike from that plasma test. It's not just emitting a signal, it's calling attention. To who? She said. The government? No, Evan said darkly. The government doesn't send ghosts in black vans. This is private, military adjacent, a splinter group maybe, mercenaries with too much funding. But that's not what worries me. He pulled up a new screen. Lena leaned closer. Is that the pulse log? He nodded. This one came from outside the solar system. Later that night, Jace sat alone again, suit dormant but humming softly beneath his skin. He looked at his hands. I was just supposed to deliver a part. Now I'm breaking people like they're made of cardboard. You restrained. You chose mercy. He sighed. But how long can I keep choosing that? The suit didn't answer. The stars above him were clear, and far away in those stars something had changed course. Chapter 5. Trial by Fire. The forge chamber groaned under pressure. Jace stood in the center, armored, steady, eyes closed. The floor below him vibrated with energy, magnetic pulses oscillating faster than human perception. A dozen drones circled him above, firing stun rounds and motion-tracking pulses. Evan's voice crackled through the speakers. Initiating Phase 4. Let's see what you're really capable of. Jace opened his eyes. The first drone dove, fast and low. He moved without thought. A twist, a sidestep. His hand snapped upward, catching the drone midair and flinging it into another, shattering both in a blink of blue light. The next three attacked in formation. Jace dropped into a slide, planting a palm against the floor. From his gauntlet an energy pulse erupted, a radial shockwave that sent the remaining drones crashing into the walls. Lena whistled from the observation deck. That wasn't in yesterday's programming. It wasn't in any programming, Evan said. The suit is unlocking itself. After the test, Jace stood outside the chamber, steam rising from the armor. It cooled almost like skin, soft pulses still glowing along the veins of the plates. I didn't plan those moves, he said quietly. It's like the suit knew what to do before I did. Lena approached, tablet in hand. You're syncing. It's not just adapting. It's teaching you. Jace shook his head. Feels more like it's showing me what it already knows. Evan joined them. Because it does. That lattice, it's storing more than structural memory. I think it contains experience, records from the war, combat patterns, tactics, maybe even personalities. Jace frowned. Personalities? We don't know what the original creators were like, Evan said. But this suit, it might not just be a weapon, it might be a survivor. That night, Jace dreamed again. But they weren't his dreams. He stood on a battlefield of molten glass and metal, alien moons burning in the sky. Giant forms moved through the smoke, not machines, but beings of light and steel, like gods, each one clad in armor not unlike his own, but older and scarred. And then the darkness came. Not a thing, a swarm, shadows with teeth, red-eyed beasts twisted in metal and bone. The Drevlar. He turned to fight. But the vision ended before the clash. He awoke with the suit's voice whispering one word, Harbingers. The next morning, the forge alarms blared. Emergency call from Sector 9, Lena yelled from her desk. It's the old relay station. Someone's hijacked it and is broadcasting wideband surveillance footage of the suit. Evan's face drained. They're trying to expose us. Jace was already moving. Get me there, he said. Fastest route. The relay station was a relic, half sunken in the sand, left over from Cold War communications. Now it lit the desert like a flare, its antennas glowing with stolen power. Jace landed hard outside the gate, his boots sending up waves of dust. A half-dozen men were inside, armed, moving fast, uploading footage. Jace gave them one chance. Leave now. They didn't listen. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration. He didn't draw blood. He didn't even touch them with fists. He moved like lightning, disarming each attacker with controlled bursts of magnetic force. He bent barrels, fried circuits, and collapsed the transmission system, with a single directed pulse that fried every power cell in the station. When it was over, they were unconscious, but alive. And the data, gone. Back at the compound, Evan watched the footage in awe. "You flattened a high-security facility in 90 seconds, he said. Jace shrugged. "They pulled weapons," I answered. "But it wasn't the violence," Lena said, pointing to the scans. "It was the control. You're using abilities we've never even recorded. Magnetism, directed pressure waves, adaptive AI scanning. It's not human tech anymore." Evan nodded. "The suit has merged with you, Jace. You're not just wearing it. You are Starsteel now." Jace sat quietly. He felt it too. Not fear, not power, responsibility. The suit pulsed within him, alive and aware. And somewhere far beyond Earth, ancient enemies stirred. Not because of the suit's awakening, but because of what it represented. Not the return of its creators, but something worse. A new bearer, a new unknown, a new threat to their ancient vendetta. Chapter 6. Whispers in the Metal. The whispers began like echoes, not words, not language, just tones, low pulses and shimmering notes, like harmonic vibrations passing through Jace's bones. He'd be still, quiet, resting beneath the stars or training in the forge, and the tones would rise again. Sometimes they felt warm, like memories surfacing, other times cold, like something was watching from deep inside the armor. It got worse when he slept. The dreams returned, always the same burning moons, always the same battlefield of shattered crystal towers and blackened steel, and always the same things descending from the skies: clawed limbs, insectile armor, crimson energy veins, the Drevlar. Jace stood alone in the vision, surrounded, his armor cracked, his hands empty. The dream ended each time with a single flash of light, like a nova, exploding outward from his chest. He jolted awake in the medical bay. Lena was already leaning over him. "Another dream." He nodded, breath sharp. "It's not a dream. It's a memory, not mine. The suit's." Evan entered from the other side of the room. "I was hoping this wouldn't happen so soon." "What do you mean?" "I ran deeper diagnostics on the core lattice," Evan said. "It's not just processing. It's storing neural imprints. What you're seeing are echoes from whoever wore the armor before it came to Earth." Jace frowned. "You mean someone lived inside this thing before me?" "Possibly hundreds," Evan said. "Maybe thousands of years ago." Jace stood, letting the armor activate across his shoulders and chest. It felt heavier today, like the memories were settling in. "Why now?" he asked. "Why show me this now?" The suit answered with a low resonance in his skull. "Because they are coming." Later that night, Jace returned to the desert. He stood beneath the same stars that had seen the meteor fall. He let the suit unfold fully, the full armor glowing, pulsing, humming like a living thing, and then he reached inward, calling to it. "What are you?" he whispered. "Who made you?" The suit's voice emerged, clearer than ever before, still calm, still powerful, but this time personal. "We were forged in the furnace of Elion in the last cycle of the war. We were designed not to destroy, but to remember. Each bearer added to the core, their actions, their thoughts, their fate. You are the first new imprint in 1,000 generations." Jace closed his eyes. "And what happened to the last bearer?" "Consumed." The wind picked up, dry and restless. Back at the lab, Lena monitored the suit's energy spikes. "He's doing something. Resonances off the charts. Wait, Evan, look at this." Evan peered at the screen. A pattern pulsed through the display. Not random, not organic. A message. "The flame survives. The signal carries. The scourge remains, Evan whispered. The suit isn't just remembering. It's broadcasting again. Somewhere in the dark between systems, far beyond human eyes, three cold synthetic minds stirred in tandem. Each one locked onto the signal's pulse. Each one recognized the core lattice signature. And each one came to the same conclusion. The flame of the creators has returned. Terminate the signal, extinguish the host. They launched. Not a fleet, just three. That's all it would take. Jace opened his eyes as the whispers stopped. He felt it in his chest, a hum shifting to a quiet vibration. The armor was calm. But that calm felt like the silence before a storm. Chapter 7. The Extraction Team. The helicopters came at dawn. No insignias, no call signs, just matte black machines slicing through the pale sky, rotors humming like hornets. Three of them in perfect formation, dropping low over the mesa ridge near Evan's compound. Inside the Forge lab, sirens blared. Lena's voice shot through the comms. Inbound military craft. They're not responding to hails, and they've jammed the perimeter sensors. Evan cursed. Scramble protocols. Lock the vaults. Get Jace in containment. Too late, Jace said, stepping into the hall, already armored. His voice was calm, steady. They're here for me. The first wave hit hard. A breach charge took out the side door. Smoke flooded the corridor, followed by 6 men in full tack armor. Rail rifles, sonic stunners, high-impact exo frames. They moved with surgical precision. Jace moved faster. He ducked a sonic blast, twisted between them and swept one soldier off his feet with a shockwave kick. The suit anticipated their patterns, predicting bullet trajectories before they were fired. He didn't aim to kill, but he made sure they'd remember. He caught a baton mid-swing, crushed it in his hand, and shoved its owner into a wall, hard enough to crumple his armor. "Retreat," Jace growled, voice amplified through the helmet. "This isn't your fight." Outside, a second squad descended on the compound's roof. Lena was pinned in the server room, sparks raining from broken lights. "Jace," she panted over comms, "they're trying to access the lattice drives. They know what we've built." Evan's voice cut in. "There's no way they could know the signal architecture unless someone sold them the blueprint." Jace's blood boiled. "Then let's take it back." He burst through the stairwell, breaking through steel plating like paper. On the rooftop, soldiers turned just in time to see a figure of blue fire and metal streak toward them, fists glowing, eyes lit with alien power. The impact was seismic. Jace slammed into the center of the formation, unleashing a kinetic pulse that scattered men like leaves in a wind tunnel. Rifles shattered, armor cracked. One attacker tried to deploy a neural disruptor. Jace disabled it with a microburst of EMP energy. Seconds later, the roof was clear. Inside the wrecked server room, Lena pulled the final core module from the wall just as a last attacker reached her. The man raised his weapon and stopped. Hovering inches from him was Jace, the blue glow of his armor flaring. "You're done," he said. The man dropped the rifle. Smart. They rounded up the survivors in the lower hangar. Evan paced between them, face hard. "Who sent you?" Silence. Then one of them, grizzled, scarred, eyes like stone, spat blood and spoke. "We're not the only ones coming." Jace stepped forward. "Who else?" The man met his gaze. "You think you're wearing a weapon? You're wearing a beacon. And you just lit it up for the entire galaxy." That night, Evan ran a deep scan of the suit's power matrix. The results weren't comforting. "The signal output has increased tenfold since your last fight," he told Jace. "It's not just calling out anymore, it's pulling something in." "What kind of something?" Lena asked. Evan didn't answer right away. He stared at the screen as it flickered with strange, rhythmic pulses, signals layered in a way no human system could generate. He looked at Jace. It's a countdown. In orbit around a forgotten moon, 3 life forms stirred in cryopods. Their synthetic minds began to spin up. Weapons hummed, eyes flickered open. They had hunted the creators for millennia. Now they had a signal, a match, a target. Back on Earth, Jace stood in the silence of the forge chamber. The armor pulsed quietly, but beneath it, he could feel the pressure building. They are nearly here. 3. Designed to kill what I am. They will not show mercy. Jace closed his eyes, fists clenched. Then neither will I. Chapter 8. The Last Shard. The desert was still, windless, silent. Jace stood alone outside the compound as the sun slipped behind the ridgeline. His armor retracted halfway, leaving his face exposed to the cooling air. The silence was deceptive, a moment of peace before the truth he'd been running from finally caught up. Behind him, the forge lights dimmed as Evan stepped into the open. "You've been quiet," Evan said. Jace didn't turn. "You know something about the metal?" Evan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Inside the lab, Lena brought up the oldest scans. "We found it 2 weeks ago, a tiny sliver buried in the data from the forge chamber's resonance logs. Just a fragment, maybe half the size of a fingernail." Jace frowned. "Another piece of the meteorite?" "No," Evan said. "The last piece." He tapped the monitor. It wasn't part of the original impact. It was released when the armor bonded to you, like an egg hatching, a final seed embedded in the core matrix. The shard hovered inside a containment field, spinning slowly, a dark, glimmering crystal with thin veins of glowing blue. Unlike the armor, it was rough, untamed, raw. "It's reactive," Lena said, "but unstable. I think it's the suit's final failsafe, a backup charge, or a message." "A message to who?" Evan turned to Jace. "To you." That night, Jace entered the observation chamber alone. He stood before the shard, letting the armor fully activate. The containment field hummed, but the shard responded not to machines, only to him. As he approached, it pulsed once, then dissolved into light, and entered him. The effect was instant. He was somewhere else, not physically, not even mentally, something deeper, like being pulled into a cosmic memory encoded in light and matter. He stood before a council of towering beings, their armor similar to his but more intricate, less warlike, more regal. Their voices echoed through his mind, not in words but purpose. "If this message is received, then we are no more. Our world is dust, our enemies relentless. This final shard carries our legacy and our last defense. Only one bearer can hold the core. Only one can complete the bond. The metal is not a weapon, it is a witness. And now it is yours." He woke on the floor, gasping, the armor surging with new energy. Blue lines etched across his skin glowed faintly, even where the armor had retracted. It had fused deeper, more permanent, more alive. Evan and Lena rushed in. "What happened?" Lena asked. Jace looked at them, eyes brighter than before. "There is no more of it," he said. "No more alien steel. What I wear is the last shard in existence." Evan stared at him. "Then if anything happens to you—" "There's no backup," Jace finished. "No replacement. If I fall, it all dies with me." Back in orbit, the Drevlar scouts locked onto the last broadcast pulse. One of them, the largest, reached forward and placed a clawed hand against the translucent navigation panel. It pulsed red, Target acquired. Later that night, Jace stood outside again, armor folded into his skin, only the glow of his chest plate showing through the fabric. Lena joined him. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm not supposed to feel human anymore," he said. She looked up at the stars. "You still are." He glanced at her. "I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if I ever was." The suit stirred gently beneath his skin, like a creature dreaming. "They are close. Prepare." The stars overhead didn't answer, but something just beyond them was already descending, not in peace, not in curiosity, but in war. Chapter 9. Into the world. The call came through a shaky civilian radio transmission. A freight convoy, unarmed humanitarian, was ambushed while crossing the rural edge of New Mexico. The attackers weren't ordinary bandits. They moved like soldiers, spoke no language, and had gear that no one could identify. Jace didn't wait for clearance. By the time the local sheriff's department even responded, he was already in the sky, blue light trailing behind him like a comet. The ambush site was carnage. 2 trucks burned on the roadside. The desert shimmered with heat as terrified survivors huddled behind shattered cargo crates. The attackers moved among the wreckage like ghosts, tall, armored, masked in black chrome. Jace landed like thunder. The earth trembled. Blue energy radiated outward in a circle as he rose from a crouch. One of the attackers turned and fired. The round hit his chest plate and disintegrated on impact, rippling into nothing. Jace didn't flinch. He raised a hand and sent a concussive pulse that flattened the attacker instantly. Another ran at him with a plasma blade. He sidestepped, twisted, and disarmed them with surgical precision. The civilians watched in silence, eyes wide. None of them ran. They weren't sure whether to fear him or believe in him. 10 minutes later, it was over. The attackers were subdued, unconscious but alive. No casualties among the civilians. Jace made sure of it. As he turned to leave, a child stepped forward from behind a broken crate. Her voice was small, barely audible. "Are you Iron Man?" Jace paused, then shook his head. I'm something else." He activated the suit's full armor again, metal folding seamlessly around him, blue light pulsing like a living heart. "I'm Starsteel." News broke within the hour. Security drones picked up footage. Civilians posted shaky videos to social feeds. Satellite pings tracked an unknown entity moving at impossible speeds. Overnight, he went from ghost story to global headline. At the compound, Evan paced as dozens of video feeds played on the walls. "This is bad," he muttered. "The whole world knows now." Lena crossed her arms. They were going to find out eventually. "Not like this. This isn't a reveal. It's a target painted on his chest." Jace entered, pulling off his helmet. "I did the right thing." "No one's saying you didn't," Evan said. "But now you're a public figure. You're not just protecting lives anymore. You're representing something." "What?" Jace asked. "An alien artifact fused to a delivery guy." "No," Lena said softly. "A symbol." That night, a global broadcast aired. An unknown user had leaked high-definition footage of the armored figure in action. Someone had used a voice generator to add narration. They call him Starsteel. He came from nowhere, but he stands for something more. Not a soldier, not a god, but a force we've never seen before. If he's on our side, maybe we have a chance. Meanwhile, in a steel-plated orbiting scout vessel, Carthul stirred. The brute awoke in his stasis pod, muscles tensing as synthetic veins filled with black ichor. Data streamed across his HUD strength targets, atmospheric conditions, signal origin. The enemy had returned, or so it believed. Next to him, Sixra flickered into consciousness, her limbs stretching like blades as she connected to the hive scan. Images of Earth, of Jace, of the Starsteel signal flooded her perception. He is not creator. He is not Drevlar. He is unbound. From the command terminal, Vulraj opened his eyes last. His mind immediately linked to the signal and began rewriting it, decoding, tracing, filtering. "Send no transmission," he whispered aloud. "We do not warn prey." Back on Earth, Jace stared at his reflection in a broken mirror. Not because he doubted who he was, but because for the first time he wasn't sure who else was looking back. The suit flickered as if acknowledging the thought. "They will come in silence. They will not speak. You must stand alone." Jace clenched his fists. "Then I won't fall alone." Chapter 10. The Synthetic Threat. 2 weeks later, whispers of a second armored figure began circulating through encrypted forums and black market military networks. Rumors told of a man clad in dark alloy, moving through war zones untouched, leaving only silence and scorch marks. No emblem, no mercy, no survivors. The public hadn't seen him, but Jace had heard enough. "Where's the footage?" he asked Evan. Evan hesitated, then pulled up a private feed, intercepted from a satellite relay. He tapped the screen. A silent video played. Night vision. A remote base somewhere in Eastern Europe, burned to the ground. Vehicles twisted into molten sculpture. Troops scattered like broken dolls. And at the center, a figure walked calmly through the wreckage. 6'4", jet black armor, red glow emanating from its spine. No helmet, just a human face, cold, proud, and fully conscious of what he'd become. "Who is that?" Jace asked. Lena answered from across the lab. "His name is Reddick Vane." Reddick had once worked with Evan in the early years, before ethics became a problem. Brilliant, ruthless, a synthetic systems expert who believed AI should be used, not bonded with. He had studied alien fragments recovered decades ago, failed alloys, inert junk, but now it was clear someone had given him real specs, or worse, he had stolen them from Evan's archive. "They're calling him Iron Vane," Lena muttered, scrolling through chatter feeds. "He's built an armor based on your early prototypes, but his isn't bonded. It's controlled, wired straight into his nervous system. If you're a symbiosis..." "He's a parasite," Jace finished. Evan leaned in. "Worse, he's cracked enough alien design to enhance human aggression, but the suit doesn't regulate him, it amplifies him." Jace stared at the screen as Reddick stepped over bodies in the dark. "He's trying to be what I am, without earning it." The confrontation came sooner than expected. A coded signal reached the Forge lab. Direct, untraceable. A challenge. "Starsteel, come alone." Desert coordinates attached. No innocents, no witnesses. Jace didn't hesitate. He landed at the site just before midnight. The sand glowed under moonlight. The wind still. In the distance stood Reddick Vane, fully armored, sleek and black, red light running like blood through his plating. He turned slowly. "I wanted to see you up close," Reddick said. "The world's little miracle." Jace approached without fear. "You built a ghost of what you don't understand." Reddick smirked. "No, Jace, I surpassed it. I stripped out the voices, the limitations. I don't want a suit that thinks. I want one that obeys." "You mean one that kills?" "I mean one that wins." The battle was instant and brutal. Jace fired first. A plasma burst from his palm. Reddick rolled beneath it, countered with an energy spike that clipped Jace's shoulder and knocked him back 5 feet. The suits clashed in a blur of force and fury. fists striking with the power of cannons, shockwaves rippling through the desert floor. Jace moved with precision, balanced, centered. Reddick fought like a machine unleashed, raw speed and fury, unconcerned with damage, only output. Their blows cracked stone, lit the sky, shattered dunes. Mid-battle, Reddick grinned behind his visor. "You're holding back. You always were soft." Jace caught his next strike midair. I'm just not a monster." He flipped Reddick over his shoulder, slamming him into the ground, then released a controlled blast of magnetic force that disrupted Reddick's systems. Red sparks flew. The dark suit glitched, momentarily stalling. Jace stood over him. "You made a weapon, but I'm something else." Reddick hissed, reaching for a hidden spike. Jace crushed it before it left his hand. "You're done." He left Reddick unconscious in the crater, his suit deactivated and locked. Authorities arrived minutes later, alerted by Lena's anonymous tip. Reddick would live. But without his suit, he was just a man. One who tried to play God and lost. Back at the compound, Evan watched as Jace stepped inside, bruised but steady. "You okay?" Lena asked. Jace nodded slowly. He wasn't the real threat. Evan turned to the console. But they're getting closer." He tapped a screen showing orbital anomalies, unexplained energy distortions above the atmosphere. "They're almost here." Somewhere above Earth, a black vessel pierced into orbit, silent and unannounced. Inside, Karthul, Sixra, and Vulraj emerged from cryostasis. They had seen the mimic, but they were not interested in copies. They had come for the original. Chapter 11. The Hidden Signal. The sky above the Pacific cracked without sound. High in Earth's upper atmosphere, an object slipped through like a shadow through silk. No fire, no heat, no trace on radar. A living craft, grown not built, shaped from obsidian alloy and humming with encoded purpose. It didn't burn as it entered. It folded light, folded gravity, folded time. And when it touched down in a remote canyon outside Mongolia, the Earth whispered in pain. In the Forge lab, Lena's screen pulsed with distortion. "What the hell is that?" she asked, spinning in her chair. Evan leaned in. "That's not human." The data stream wasn't just radiation or seismic activity. It was structured, embedded frequencies, rhythms in a pattern too perfect to be natural. "It's a signal," he said slowly, "but not one we're sending." Jace entered the lab, the suit already active under his shirt. "Then who's sending it?" The monitor flashed, the data stream realigning into a pulsing image. A symbol, 3 overlapping rings, one black, one red, one void, the Drevlar mark. Jace stared. "I've seen that," he said. "In my dreams, in the suit's memories." Evan turned to him. "It's not a warning, it's a challenge." Lena pointed to a satellite visual. "We just lost contact with a research base outside Ulaanbaatar. Power grid gone, whole feed went dark." "Same time as the touchdown," Evan added. "That's not coincidence." Jace nodded once, slow and sure. "I need to go." Lena grabbed his arm. "We're not even sure what they are." "I am," he said. "They're not invaders. They're hunters." Across the planet, news networks scrambled to make sense of outages, anomalies, and strange tremors. But in the shadows of governments, whispers spread faster. Black Ops satellites showed flickers of movement too fast to be aircraft. Thermal sensors caught vague outlines, tall humanoid figures surrounded by a field of distortion. One moved like a tank made of iron and bone. One flickered in and out of view, blade-limbed and serpentine, and one just watched and waited. Evan finally pieced it together in the Forge. The suit's signal isn't just broadcasting, it's responding, like a receiver. To what? Something built into the Drevlar's tech. They're not just tracking Starsteel, they're measuring it, testing it. He looked at Jace. They're not here to conquer, they're here to see if you're worth destroying. The suit responded with a whisper only Jace could hear. They remember the last bearer. They remember our flame. They fear its return. That night, Jace stood outside alone, helmet on, armor engaged. The desert air hummed. Lightning arced silently in the clouds above. And then he heard it, not from the suit, not from Evan or Lena, from the earth itself. A voice, deep and inhuman, vibrating through the ground like a buried subwoofer. Host confirmed. Target locked. Interception imminent. Jace clenched his fists as the suit's core began to glow with a heat he'd never felt before. Not pain, not fire, resolve. At that same moment, deep in the Mongolian canyon, the three alien scouts stood in silence. Carthul stretched his arms, his plated hide grinding like tectonic plates. Sixra skittered along the cliff wall, invisible to the human eye. Vulraj stared into the horizon with psionic sensors glowing from his skull. They had located the flame. They had calculated the bearer's origin. Now they would test his worth, and if he failed, Earth would follow. Chapter 12. Arrival of the Scourge. The first sign was a power drop. Across the southwest, entire grids flickered, not failing but glitching like something was drawing on the current. Cars stalled, cell towers lost signal, even satellites stuttered in orbit. At the forge compound, Lena stared at the diagnostics. "This isn't a blackout," she whispered. "It's a scan. They are mapping us." Jace stood already armored, the blue veins of the suit glowing brighter than they ever had before. "They're close." A storm built over the desert, but there were no clouds, just static. Electricity crawled through the sand, lightning lashed sideways from a clear sky, carving spirals into the earth. And then came the sound, not thunder, not wind, but pressure, like the sky itself was inhaling. Then they arrived. The ship wasn't a ship. It was a pod, grown from the same living alloy as the scouts. It twisted open like a blooming flower of black metal, embedding itself halfway into the canyon floor. From the petals stepped three beings, tall, monstrous, deliberate. Carthul, the brute, moved like a continent walking upright, obsidian plates flexing across his frame. Sixra, the assassin, flickered with cloaking distortion, her form ghosting across the stone like shadow play, and Vulraj, the mind, floated just above the ground, his face exposed, skeletal, ancient, with four glowing psionic lenses rotating around his head. They did not speak, they simply walked. West, toward the signal, toward Starsteel. Jace intercepted them in the salt flats by sunset. No one else was around for miles, just cracked earth, wind, and the humming core of his armor. The scouts stopped in unison. Carthul took a step forward, cracking the ground beneath his foot. Jace spoke first. "I'm not your enemy." No response. Sixra vanished in a flicker of light. "Engagement begins," the suit whispered. Then it happened. Sixra struck first, appearing behind Jace mid-sentence with a silent blade aimed at his spine. But the suit reacted before he could. His backplate split open and flared outward, releasing an omnidirectional shock pulse that knocked Sixra back 10 meters. She vanished again, flickering like broken film. Carthul roared. The brute charged, his fists glowing with antimatter flux. Jace met him mid-sprint, two titans colliding in a quake that split the salt crust for miles. The impact sent shockwaves into the air, peeling dust into mushroom spirals. Jace staggered but held his ground. Carthul's armor was denser, heavier, but slower. Jace launched into a rising strike, knees glowing with propulsion. He struck the brute's chin and followed with a double palm blast to the chest that hurled the creature 50 feet back. Before he could breathe, a psionic wave slammed into him from behind. Vulraj had entered the fight. The battlefield became chaos. Jace turned and activated his magnetic anchors, planting himself just before the blast could throw him off his feet. He grounded the energy through the suit, redirecting it outward in an arc that shattered Sixra's invisibility mid-pounce. The assassin screamed, a high, chittering frequency, and vanished again. Jace gritted his teeth. "They fight like a pack." "They are designed to," the suit replied. "Divide, overwhelm, eliminate." Carthul rose again, slower this time, his plating sparking with damage. Jace moved faster now, smarter. He began coordinating with the suit's predictive scans, outmaneuvering strikes before they even came. He dodged, countered, surged with plasma energy, and when Vulraj attempted a second psionic barrage, Jace timed a pulse burst to disrupt his line of sight, shattering one of the rotating mind lenses. The commander shrieked, black blood leaking from his exposed circuitry. But Sixra was still hunting. She finally struck true, a blade sliding beneath Jace's rib, but it didn't pierce. The suit hardened instantly, folding a secondary plate between her weapon and his flesh. Jace whirled, grabbing her by the wrist, and launched her skyward with a gravity repulsor burst. She disappeared into the clouds in a screaming arc. The ground cracked as Carthul lunged a final time. Jace didn't move. He simply dropped to one knee, triggered the core overload, and let the blast expand outward like a sun flare. Carthul took the full force to the chest and crumpled. When the dust cleared, all 3 Drevlar scouts were down. Not dead, but broken. Jace stood breathing hard, smoke rising from his armor, sparks flickering across his gauntlets. "Status," he whispered. "Signal terminated." Hunters defeated. Transmission ceased. He looked to the sky. No more sound, no more pressure, just wind, earth, silence. He collapsed to one knee, not from injury, but from release. The test was over, and he had passed. Back at the forge, Lena watched the bioscans stabilize. Evan sat down slowly, exhaling for the first time in hours. "We don't know if that's the end," he said. "But we know this," Lena replied. "They expected a weapon." Evan nodded. "And they found a warrior." Chapter 13. Starsteel ascends. The bodies of the Drevlar scouts were gone by morning, evaporated into particles of ash and memory, as if the earth itself rejected them. Jace stood on the salt flats alone, the horizon glowing gold, the wind brushing against him like a whisper from another world. The armor retracted slowly, layer by layer, until only the core plate remained, pulsing faintly beneath his chest like a second heartbeat. "They will not return." The suit's voice was calm, certain. Jace didn't answer right away. He just looked at the place where Carthul had fallen, where Sixra had vanished into dust, where Vulraj's psionic howl had faded into silence. 3 warriors designed for extinction, and he had survived them. But survival wasn't the victory. Purpose was. Back at the forge, Lena met him with a quiet smile and a long silence. They didn't need words. Evan pulled up the telemetry logs. 3 contacts, 1 signal spike, all gone now, no trace. Jace sat across from them. "They'll come again someday. Something else. Someone worse." "Maybe," Evan said. "But they'll find a planet that remembers how to fight back." Jace glanced at the screen showing energy fluctuations around his armor. "The suit, it's stabilized. It's not evolving anymore." Lena looked at him. then maybe it's done becoming. No, Jace said quietly. It's waiting. That night, Jace returned to the ridge above the forge. He stared at the stars again, but this time, he didn't feel small. He felt connected to something vast. The suit whispered once more, "You are the first to survive all three. You are now written into the lattice. You are not a weapon. You are the memory of those who chose to protect, not conquer. You are Starsteel." In the days that followed, the world buzzed with stories. Governments scrambled for answers. Conspiracies bloomed. But the people had already decided. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a myth. He was ours. A hero not born, but forged. The final ember of a long-dead civilization, and the first light of something new. Epilogue. Somewhere far beyond Earth, a dark planet turned slowly under a dying sun. In its deepest vaults, a single eye opened. Mechanical, ancient, still watching, still listening. It did not move. It simply whispered, "The flame remains. Adjust course. Observe the bearer." End of Book 1, Starsteel.